And that wine, man, it just blew my hair back and changed my life. What you had for lunch is impacting what you're tasting right now. The temperature outside, the temperature of the wine, the music we were listening to, the room you're sitting in, the people you're with. That was it.
That's the only bit of
efficiency of vermouth. You just toast Italy. So to the Italians, this is quite literally the blood of God.
The liquid culture.
It is no longer... So the single malt whiskeys by law have to be made with 100% malted barley. And I don't know. So they used to add wheat to that product, but they don't anymore.
Well, that's damn tasty. Damn tasty.
I think so.
Cool. Well, we're rolling here, man.
All right.
What's up, guys? Mitchell Chirac with the Liquid Culture here with my good friend Henry Crowson for a little Texas wine tasting interview here in the beautiful Texas Hill Country. Not so beautiful today. I'm already spilling wine, dude.
That's why we don't have nice things.
Thanks for being here with me, brother.
You bet, man.
You want to say hello to the folks?
Yeah. Hello. I'm Henry Crowson. I operate my winery and tasting room in downtown Johnson City, Texas, the thriving metropolis of Johnson City. We are one of the few urban wineries here in Texas.
That's
pretty
right.
Cool.
Hell yeah. Well, Henry and I are sipping on a little bit of Arno Roberts just to start. We just had a little bit of whiskey as well, but Arno Roberts and whiskey are not the main focus, but I was drinking a little of this Trousseau from Arno Roberts last night, and it reminded me a little bit of your wines, and I wanted to bring it in and share some of it with you. It's got a little bit of a, what was the term that I used last time we were in here? Italian underbelly.
Italian underbelly.
It's got a little bit of that tomato cherry thing going on. It's really fun.
Yeah.
But I think what we want to do here, how do you think best way to do the wines?
Oh man, start left to right.
Okay.
These are all Sangiovese wines, and super exciting. This was actually the first vintage, so 2018 was the first vintage that I ever worked with Sangiovese under the Crowson brand. And stylistically, I am non-interventionist on my winemaking approach. I make wine, a lot of folks will call it 0-0 wine, 0-0 essentially being the idea of nothing added, nothing taken away. And you can tell even with the rosés, they're very clearly cloudy. They're deliberately unfiltered. They're made with ambient yeast, so spontaneous fermentation. But what is most exciting about all this Sangiovese, these are the same grapes from the same vineyard harvested on the exact same day. The approach as far as what I did in the winery is all that varied. So this first rosé, I named it barrel-aged rosé just as an indicator to separate it from its sister. So we have the barrel-aged rosé.
Bam.
Mm-hmm. We have Signet rosé, and then we have red wine, Sangiovese. But I would just call this 2018 rosé, but I did want to separate it from its sister here. This one was given the name Signet. That was given the name barrel-aged. What is notable about these two rosés, they're both barrel-aged. We barrel-age all of our white and rosé wines here. I feel like barrel-aging in white and rosé in particular produces something a little more dynamic, less linear, less one note, more fuller, rounder. A symphony, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm glad that we decided on this lineup of wines because, well, one, I'm excited that you have a lineup of wines like this because it gives us an opportunity to really show the versatility of, like you said, same grape, same vintage, same vineyard, same harvest date.
Yeah.
And you cannot get a more different express. I mean, even from the obviously the red wine's going to taste different than the rosés, but having these two rosés that could not be more different from each other is like super exciting for me.
It's been a treat in here too, pouring wine for guests. I'd like to think that my number one job in Texas wine is making wine. I don't think that's the case. I think right now, number one job is consumer education. Which the sheer volume that people don't know about wine would crush this building. And that's okay, because with wine, you don't know unless somebody tells you.
Yeah.
You just don't dream up one night that red wine gets its color from grape skins, you automatically assume that the juice must be red. Well, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And someone needs to tell you in order to set you straight, or you need to research it.
And the strawberry in the wine is not because we added strawberries to the tank.
Negative Ghost Rider. Yeah.
Well, before we get into, and I'll pour us a little bit more here, I wanted to give us a splash, and then we'll dive into some more of the kind of actual flavors and structure of this wine. But before we do that, tell me a little bit about your beginnings, or don't tell me. I know your beginnings. Tell them a little bit about your beginnings.
Yeah. I started helping make wine in Texas in 2014. Prior to that, I was working in the restaurant industry. Working in restaurants, I was a bartender, server, and I would manage the restaurant on like Thursday nights and Friday nights. And it was when I was in college working at this restaurant that I started drinking more and more wine. My wife grew up in Dripping Springs, which is a stone's throw from Johnson City here. And it was Christmas break, December 2010. I went and visited my wife and her family in Dripping over Christmas, and took her wine tasting out here. Started tasting some of these Texas wines, and holy smokes, they were good.
Wow!
And started pursuing more and more Texas wines over the next few years, tasting, seeing what was going on out here. And job opportunity came available in December 2013. I applied and ended up working at William Chris Vineyards, just down the highway here.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Just
man.
shot a video with old Chris Brundrett.
Dude, my buddy.
Good guy.
One of our best friends, man. That place is really close to us. I mean, it changed our lives, and got my first start in the wine industry working there. My first position was assistant wine club manager, so working on the office end of things. And I transitioned to the cellar pretty quickly. I wanted to be among the barrels, learn how to make wine. Started cutting my teeth in winemaking aggressively in 2015. 2016 was when I asked for permission to buy some grapes, start my own brand. Made about 130 cases worth of wine in 2016. And then in March of 2017, a really beautiful thing happened. I got offered a job at a whiskey distillery, Andalusia Whiskey Company, just south of here.
What? Mm-hmm. That we just drank?
That you just drank, yeah.
You kept that little secret from me until just now on camera. You wanted my reaction.
Dramatic irony. Yeah. So I started working at Andalusia. It was an amazing thing. So this business, it was the two owners and then myself. The three of us, we were going to be growing this business. And I was really excited to work through that creative process, work with those guys. But also, whiskey and wine don't compete. So in 2017, I was in a position to process enough fruit for about 500 cases worth of wine. It was in 2017 that I started paying rent here at our tasting room.
Man, big jump from 100 to 500.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, man. It was a beautiful thing. But it worked out. We got our license to sell wine out of this facility in April 2018. I left my job at the distillery in May 2018 to do this full time. 2018, we processed enough fruit for about 1,300 cases worth of wine. And at that time, we were still doing custom crush. Custom crush in the wine industry. Basically, you pay to use another winery's equipment and facilities. And actually, these three wines were all made off-site. A little bit was still made at William Chris, where I was working. We also made a little bit of wine in 2018 at Horn Winery. They have a really cool custom crush facility in High, Texas as well. So made 1,300 cases in 2018. 2019, we finally had our winery built. We'll go in there in a second. Had our winery built in 2019 and did all production on site and doubled in size again. We made about 2,500 cases worth of wine in 2019, and I think that is our ceiling.
Dude, 2,500 is a lot. I didn't realize actually that you were making that much wine.
Right.
Just you, your dad, Amy.
Yeah, right now it's just me and my dad.
Yeah.
Amy's
well, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you and your dad making 2,500. Just said 25, right?
2,500. Yeah. So dad's my business partner in this endeavor. Henry Crowson. I called Dad in 2016. I was like, Dad, I'm buying some grapes. He was like, hell yeah, good for you. I was like, yeah, man, you want to go into business with me? And that was a beautiful thing. Obviously, getting to shoulder the financial burden with somebody. But also to this day, he's the only other person that helps me make the wine, that touches the wine. He hand labels all of these bottles himself.
I've watched him do it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So a really big part of what we're doing here. And my wife has helped out historically. Right now she's in the trenches. We've got a 2.5-year-old, a 1-year-old, and baby girl number 3 is landing in April. So we've got our party pants on for sure, getting ready for that one. But it's a beautiful thing.
It's hilarious to me that you started out at a desk job in the wine industry. Well, not maybe yes and no. Started out hospitality industry, but as your wine career kind of sprouted behind a desk, which. If you guys ever get a chance to meet this man, he is not a behind a desk kind of guy.
No,
this is
man.
a customer-facing person right here.
So 2014, there were a couple of times where, the fellow that did have the full-time winery positions, they'd be working late, and I wasn't married at the time, so I would just wander over to the winery after leaving the office, and I'd get to help them process grapes in 2014. Now, again, the sheer volume that I didn't know about processing grapes would crush this building, but I did start learning in 2014, got to help clean certain pieces of equipment using techniques that I still use to this day. And those were things that I learned in 2014 from those cats. 2015, things really started getting serious on the winemaking side of things, but also really notable in 2015, about November 2015, I drank a Zinfandel from Sonoma. The Zinfandel was made by a guy named Tony Katuri, and this was the first wine I'd ever had that was made like this, where if it had an ingredients list, the ingredients were grapes, and that was it. And that wine, man, it just blew my hair back and changed my life. Been chasing those flavors ever since. So that moment was the catalyst to want to purchase grapes in 2016, ferment the wine spontaneously using ambient yeast, hopefully using yeast that actually came out of the vineyard on the grapes themselves.
Sure,
the French, they have that beautiful word terroir, Terroir. Terroir does not have a direct translation from French to English, but I asked a French winemaker one time, I said, what does terroir mean to you? And she said terroir is when a wine takes on the energy of a place.
I love that. That's so French.
I know. It was
that is the French to English translation.
I was flipping through the notes in my phone the other day, and I got to that note. It was like this note was taken at 9:45 at night in October of 2015, wow. And that's when I happened to be talking to that winemaker. But that was a huge moment. I like to think maybe by making wine like this, these wines do better express their vineyard's energy or their vineyard's terroir. We do focus on varietal wines. These are all 100% Sangiovese, and we do focus on single vineyard wines. These are all farmed at Horsefly Vineyard in Yoakum County, Texas, which is southwest of Lubbock. These grapes were farmed by a fellow named Sean Rowden. But making varietal vineyard designated wines, that really excites me to think, what does Sangiovese from Horsefly taste like in 2018? Here in a second, we'll taste the 2019 Sangiovese from Horsefly. Awesome. And then really do a cool side-by-side comparison to see exactly how the year impacts a bottle of wine. How does that terroir change from year to year? And, terroir is often associated with this idea of having a sense of place. You've got your soil profile, your elevation, your rainfall, your humidity. Soil profile is constant, elevation is constant, and then you have your variables, kind of, again, rainfall, humidity, temperature is huge, and that's what's going to change every single year. That's why that date on a bottle of wine is so relevant. These wines happened, and they're beautiful, and they'll never happen again. Yeah, which is kind of cool to think about.
And not only that, but when you taste them when they're first bottled, they're going to taste completely different 6 months from then or a year from then. So really, when you're drinking a bottle of wine, it's like a snapshot in time, not only of what that grape did from that place in that vintage, but it's a snapshot in time of what it is tasting like right now, because tomorrow it's not going to taste the same.
For sure.
A year later, it's going to taste vastly different,
Man, it's a beautiful thing. And that's why wine's such a worthwhile pursuit. If you tasted it and it was constantly the same, why pursue it? The changing nature of wine is such a treat. Right now, in between Johnson City and Fredericksburg, there are 75 different places to taste wine. We're all doing something a little bit different, which is pretty kick-ass, because you can go and try wine at 75 different places and find out what floats your boat. The only way you can tell a good wine from a bad wine is whether or not you want another glass.
Yeah.
And that is personal for everybody.
Yeah. I was telling somebody that we had we had our pickup party at Abastris yesterday, and I was talking to somebody about one of the wines, and she was like, I've tasted these 3 whites, and this one, just for whatever reason, there's something about it that it doesn't suit my fancy. And I was like, thank you for being honest about that, because that's what's so beautiful about wine, is that your taste might be so different from my taste, and that doesn't mean this is a bad wine. It just means it's not your wine.
For sure. Yeah. As a winemaker, you can't make wine for everybody's palate.
No.
If you're doing that, who are you doing a service?
And I don't know. I won't be interviewing any wine. I'll tell you this. I will not be interviewing or ever have on my site wines from somebody who is doing that. Because if you're making wines just to meet a palate, that's not doing service to what the rest of the people in this industry are trying to do.
For sure. One of my biggest goals here is to make stuff that I get really excited about, because I have to make it, I have to pour it, and I damn sure have to drink a lot of it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I better be really, really
you better
excited
like
about
it, right?
And thus far, we've been really fortunate, and everything happens with intention. Every aspect of our wine is very deliberate. So here, this barrel-aged rosé.
Let's talk specifically about this wine right now.
These grapes were all hand harvested at Horsefly the same night as these grapes were harvested, whereas these were machined. And we'll talk more aggressively about that in a second. But these were hand harvested. The reason we chose to hand harvest these grapes was because I knew that I would make this rosé by the direct press method. General rule of thumb: juice on the inside of wine grapes is white. Red wine gets its color from grape skins. When you take that opportunity away, you've just made yourself a rosé. We hand harvested these grapes. By hand harvesting, we minimized the juice coming out of those grape skins. Those berries were whole. I was able to take those whole grape clusters, throw them inside of our press, turn the machine on. This press is a giant cylinder with holes inside of it. Inside of this cylinder is a bladder that expands like a balloon. Throw whole grapes inside of the cylinder, turn the machine on, the bladder expands, forces the grapes against the walls of that cylinder, evacuates all the juice. You collect the juice, move it into a tank or into a barrel, and you throw the grape skins away or feed them to cattle, which is actually what we do. But that's the direct press method rosé winemaking. That's the most common way to make rosé. That's what they're doing in the south of France.
Did you say you whole clustered it?
It was whole cluster pressed.
Cool. Mm-hmm. So that's where a little bit of that kind of stemmy, kind of brambly, fun thing that is in this wine comes from that.
Definitely
that
a contributing
cluster.
factor. Yeah.
Okay, so if you guys ever need to reference back on how to make a direct press rosé, watch this video.
That's it.
Henry just threw it out there in very easy to understand terms.
Easy to
understand.
Cheers, brother. Yeah, cheers.
The thing I love about this wine, and I think that you gave us a shot of it back when it was still in barrel, is a couple of things, and I'll let you elaborate on them. But one, barrel aging is not a very common place for rosé, as well as allowing the wine to go through malolactic fermentation. So it takes on this incredibly soft, rich, creamy kind of characteristic that I think is so unique about this rosé, as opposed to something like, another kind of Provençal style rosé where you're like Miraval or something like that, where you're going and getting it and it's really
something dry,
crisp, and yes, exactly, and doesn't have any of that impartation of slightly kind of earthy, herbal, I always catch myself saying green, because a lot of times that's such a negative word in winemaking, but there is a green component to this that makes it such a unique rosé.
Yeah.
So talk more about that process.
I personally don't pick up on a whole lot of green. To me, this just screams grapefruit and peaches sometimes. But you mentioned malolactic fermentation. This is huge for our white and rosé wine program. Malolactic fermentation is the secondary fermentation. So primary fermentation, the first fermentation, yeast eats sugars in grape juice, turns that sugar into alcohol. And that's what we were just talking about with spontaneous fermentation that takes place using ambient yeast as opposed to commercially available yeast. That's primary fermentation. Secondary fermentation, this process also occurs spontaneously. Grapes have a really high content of malic acid. Malic acid is what you find in an apple. It's bright and it's crisp. There is a bacteria, lactic acid bacteria, that can consume malic acid, convert that malic acid into lactic acid. Now, lactic acid is what you find in milk. It's smooth and it's creamy. Most often, when you're making rosé, you want to inhibit malolactic fermentation. You want to retain that beautiful malic acid concentration so you can have this wine that is bright and crisp. Think about drinking rosé on your front porch or by the pool on a hot day. That's really what you're looking for, that acid. Well, the best way to inhibit malolactic fermentation is by adding sulfites. Sulfur is a really beautiful tool. It's capable of killing off lactic acid bacteria that might be in a position to eat that malic acid and convert it into lactic acid. If you add sulfites, you're in a position to possibly inhibit this process, and then you have successfully retained your malic acid concentration. There are enzymes you can use to kill lactic acid bacteria. Also, going into bottle, one of the best things you can do is sterile filtration. You can actually filter wine through a filter that's 0.45 microns. This is effectively sterile. You take all that bacteria out of it, you move it into bottle, and boom, you have a stable product that has no lactic acid bacteria in it to consume your malic acid well. Going back to our non-interventionist approach, we choose to forego the use of sulfites, and we choose to forego filtration. Oh, we're left with one possibility. We need to create an environment that encourages malolactic fermentation. So all the malic acid in our wine is consumed, it's converted into lactic acid. Our rosés and our white wines typically do lean toward a creamier profile as a result of that experience. And barrels further
accentuate.
Yes, man. So barrels been used for such a long time in winemaking because they breathe. They function like a permeable membrane. They allow oxygen in and they allow oxygen out. When oxygen comes into contact with this wine, it changes the chemical structure of that wine, makes it feel rounder, more approachable, and yet fuller and weightier at the same time. And I love that chemical reaction change. So we do choose to barrel age all of our wines, including the white and rosé wines, which has been a cool part of the program. It's made rosé that is strikingly unique.
Well, and I think when we tasted this out of the barrel, I mean, it tasted like a strawberry shortcake. I mean, shortcake with like macerated strawberries, big dollop of cream on it, and like I was just saying, snapshot in time, this wine has already developed and changed, and it's taken on some of those kind of those slight kind of tomatoey cherry qualities that I love with this entire lineup of wines that we're going to see kind of amplify as we go down the line. But it's crazy how different this wine is from when we tasted it in the barrel. What was that? Probably almost a year ago now.
It had to have been. We bottled this in April 2019.
Yeah. So
March 2019.
Yeah. So I think that was like we tasted it right before you were getting ready to bottle it, and it was vastly different then than it is now.
Super slick. Yeah. I love this wine, and I love rosé in general. I'm a rosé fanatic. I could drink it all day. Which
and
is why
it's so
we
perfect
so
for
much
Texas.
It is, man. And one thing we did, so over the summer, we were serving our rosés at 45 degrees because it was like 8 million degrees outside, give or take.
That's always, a few degrees, give or take a few degrees.
Once it started cooling off in late November, I did start serving these rosés at 55 degrees, and it's a totally different wine. The wine, more than anything, is the flavors of it are based on the situation surrounding it. Like what you had for lunch is impacting what you're tasting right now. The temperature outside, the temperature of the wine, the music we were listening to, the room you're sitting in, the people you're with.
Yeah.
You could drink a $250 bottle of first growth Bordeaux. And if you're drinking this beautiful bottle of wine with an asshole,
with a bunch of assholes,
it's going to taste bad.
It's just going to be, you're going to be pissed off.
Yeah, whereas you could drink a $7 bottle of Yellowtail Shiraz.
There you go.
And if you're with someone you really love, might not be that bad.
It's enjoyable.
I know, and I dig that about wine. So trying to create that cool environment in here. We do all of our tastings at this table just like this. And I'm in a position to present the wine the way that I want to drink it. Because again, this is all very much an extension of what I dig. This is very selfish wine that I like. And if anyone else likes it,
the best wines are selfish
Yeah.
wines. You gotta have your personality imparting flavor and character into the bottle. Otherwise, what the hell are you doing it for, right?
That's a huge part of it.
All right,
Saignée Rosé.
This gets really interesting when you start talking about production methods. I don't think a lot of people know what Saignée is. and I'm stoked for you to tell them all.
Yeah, Saignée is French. Saignée means bled. Now, again, general rule of thumb, the juice on the inside of wine grapes is white. Red wine gets its color from grape skin contact, but it doesn't just extract color from those skins. It pulls structure, tannin. Wines become bigger by virtue of being in contact with their skins, very full-bodied. Now, as a general rule of thumb, in Texas, Sangiovese wines are typically light-bodied. And I didn't want that. I wanted a Sangiovese that was more full-bodied, a Sangiovese that was more structured. I felt like the best way to make that happen was by the Saignée process. And I took red Sangiovese wine grapes, crushed these berries. I had white grape juice sitting with red grape skins. And then after about 12 hours, I started pulling some of that juice off of those skins. I bled that juice off of those skins, or Saigné'd that juice. So this rosé is the Saignée. At about 12 hours of grape skin contact, you can see it extracted a little bit of color, a little bit more than its sister here. This was machine harvested, so the juice was already sitting with the skins. Extracted a little more color than its sister, extracted a little more body. But what's most notable about that rosé is that it exists so that we can have this Sangiovese that we're about to taste. What ended up happening, the reason Saignée exists, I ended up with all of these red Sangiovese grape skins sitting with a really low volume of Sangiovese grape juice. Well, that low volume of juice, it was in a position to extract all of the available color, structure, tannin. I was able to build a full-bodied Sangiovese in a region where it's really not that common. Yeah. In theory, had I not made that rosé, you would take that bottle of rosé, this bottle of red wine, pour the two together, the resulting color would have been the color of my Sangiovese red wine. Yeah. But because we made the rosé, you're going to see the sort of color that we have on this Sangio. Oh, she's got something to say.
It's crazy to me, and it's a direct result of that exact process that you just explained. Crazy to me, the detectable amounts of tannin that's on this rosé, which is another thing, like we talked about with the barrel-aged rosé, you have this creamy kind of palate that you don't expect with rosé. The thing that this rosé has that you don't expect is it has a little tannin, a little bit of that mouth-drying effect that has come to it from having that more direct contact with the skins, which to me makes this a really kind of a serious rosé. I mean, this is not a you could pop this by the pool, slam the whole bottle.
It could dance that dance,
but it could also stand with some food and be like, "Hey, here I am. What's up?"
In November, it was still pretty hot outside. It's Texas. We don't get to pick our weather patterns. It was pretty hot outside, and Dad and I, we were grilling ribeye steaks, and we were drinking beer. It got to be, too close for guns. We needed to switch to missiles. Ooh. And we switched to this rosé because we were hot outside and we were still grilling. And after we finished cooking the steaks, we still had this bottle open. We sit down with those ribeye steaks, and we're like, man, we could open a red or we could just drink. And we poured this in a glass, paired this with a ribeye steak, and it worked. It was perfect.
No question.
Because it does have the body. And, food and wine pairings is a beautiful thing. There's a lot of chemistry and a lot of science. But also, if you like the wine you're drinking and you like the food you're eating, probably going to end up being a pretty cool pairing.
Works out.
And that worked out really nicely that day.
I completely agree. I think that this could work with any. I mean, nobody really ever thinks like rosé with steak, but I mean, when you have this kind of, I think I've told you before, this wine to me reminds me of like caprese salad. Like it's got that tomatoey thing, it's got that kind of herbal thing going on with it, and it's got some richness to it. That again, like I think that you're making some of the most interesting and unique rosés in the state right now, purely because you're making them in a way that kind of fits your ethos and like the things that you're trying to accomplish. You're not making a rosé that says, I'm trying to put this on shelves so that people buy a half a case of it and take it to the pool or on a bachelorette party. You're just saying, This is what I got from the fruit. This is how I'm going to decide to make it. And you're getting such interesting finished product in the bottle because of that. I think it's really kick-ass, man.
Cool. Yeah, we're really digging it. And white wine, rosé wine, you do get this cool little opportunity to stretch your legs a little bit more. With red wine, you're going to make red wine. You can do some funny and interesting little things. But at the end of the day, typically you're pursuing something that has body, color, quite possibly alcohol, if that's something that you're into. With rosé, man, you can do low alcohol rosé, high alcohol rosé, barrel aged, tank aged. This was 12 hours on skins. This was no skin contact. There's a lot more room to play.
Oh, yeah.
Red wine, you can play, but it's a little different. A good red wine is a good red wine. It's just a totally different category.
Well, it's a little bit more of kind of a recipe, kind of almost like if you're baking cookies, if you add this much amount of sugar, this much amount of baking soda, your cookie's going to come out in a said way. With the red wine, it's almost kind of like it's going to take on its character no matter what you can try and do different things to it, and you can definitely impart different flavors depending on your barrel and this and that. But
if you choose to chaptalize, just add sugar or extended maceration.
Yeah.
So my old buddies at William Chris did a kick-ass little report on extended maceration practices. That's a cool way to stretch your legs with red wine and see exactly how you can do things differently. But, it goes in the bottle and, again, red wine, that's the category it's in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this, I would say, definitely is in a gray area.
Yeah.
Because,
could be a light-bodied red.
You could for sure pour this for somebody and say, this is a red wine, and they'd say, well, it's pretty damn light, but okay, I believe you.
Yeah, man.
It's pretty fun stuff, man.
Speaking of red wine,
let's jump in.
So Sangiovese is the most widely planted grape in Italy. In Italian, Sangiovese translates to the blood of Jove, and the Jove that they're referring to is Jupiter, the Roman version of Zeus. So to the Italians, this is quite literally the blood of God, which I think is so stinking cool.
Yeah, that's pretty
and
pretty
it grows well in Texas, which I think is a real treat. But what do you smell? What do you taste?
Again, it's so fun to me to go through this lineup, and I'm so glad we're doing this because you get this sense of like a very similar spine. It almost has these wines all have a very similar DNA pattern. It's like having 3 kids, right? And everyone has a similarity to them, like you're about to have.
Yeah, man.
Everyone has a similarity to them, but they all have their own unique personalities. And I think that is this exact lineup of wine. They all have this underlying kind of Italian at its roots, kind of tomatoey, cherry kind of a thing. But as you go through this lineup, they all impart something kind of different that kind of makes them unique in their own right.
Yeah.
Are you just luxuriating in it right now?
Well, yeah, I like it. This was actually a conflict for me. So the idea of Saignée, that was me making wine, right? Well, the reason that's a conflict is because I do choose to make non-interventionist wine. Well, did I intervene here? That being, you can.
Damn.
I know. Well, but then again, we can take it even further back, right? It's like we can talk about how I intervened with air conditioning.
Well,
we can talk about how I intervened by choosing to harvest when I harvest. On paper, should I wait for the grapes to fall off the vine? Probably not. That'd be stupid.
Yeah.
But this was a really big internal conflict for me after I did these wines. Because did I take something away from that vineyard by making what I was pursuing, a full-bodied Sangiovese, when maybe it should have been the representation of that bottle of rosé and this bottle of red poured together? Maybe that was the proper representation. I'm proud of this because I can justify what I chose to do. It was all deliberate. I knew exactly what I was looking for. All that being said, the 2019 Sangiovese that we're about to taste from the same vineyard, I did not Saignée. And I'm excited to release that wine. That wine will be released. I released this Sangiovese this past November because I felt like it was a winter red wine because it's so big and she's got something to say.
No, it's full. I mean, this is easily on the that Brunello Jesus
Brunello de Montalcino.
Dude, it's on that. It's on that big bold side of Sangiovese.
It tastes like Sangiovese, very much so. 2019 harvest. We did not Saignée deliberately. We made the lighter expression of red wine Sangiovese. And we're going to dance the dance and release it and see people's reactions. And I think, again, because I'm in a position to sit this is all about transparency. If I'm willing to talk about what I did, that's a beautiful thing. I'm not saying this is what the vineyard gave me.
Yeah.
No, I pour it next to that. And I talk about how I signéed and why I chose to do that. 2019 did not choose to do that. We're going to make it a summer release. So we'll release it in summer 2021, so March 2021, 13 months from now is when we will release 2019 Sangiovese. And when we serve it that summer, it'll be served at 60 degrees, maybe 55. I really haven't decided yet. We need to get it in bottle and play that game and dance that dance. But put it in people's hands and see exactly which direction they lean. If this is what people are clamoring for, it's a beautiful thing. Maybe that's what we'll do, because I think that this is beautiful and exciting as well. But what if that 2019 expression is what gets people's juices flowing more? What if it does that for me? What if I prefer lighter bodied red? I'm excited to see. So 2019, we did not signé.
Was that a decision based off the fruit you got in that vintage, or was it a decision that you made based off of just kind of, let's see, we did it the Sanier, let's go the other route and see what that does?
Part of it. We took a lot of this comparison away in 2019. We actually sourced Sangiovese from a different vineyard for our direct press rosé, and we'll taste that as well. And you'll see the similarities between that direct press rosé versus what we'll taste out of barrel here in a second, albeit from a different vineyard, but same processes, and those will shine through. When it came to harvesting for red wine Sangiovese this past year, I did think about the Signé process. I didn't want to intervene, but also we had a hard time with rain this past year, and that was messing up acidity pretty aggressively. And I hate a flabby rosé.
Same.
And flabby rosé, a rosé that you taste it and there is no brightness. It almost doesn't seem alive because it lacks this beautiful acidity that a wine that's light-bodied generally desires. It craves that kind of bright acidity. So that was part of the reason why we did not signé. The main reason was, I think, because of my internal conflict. I just couldn't justify changing what the wine was giving us. But we'll see.
You're almost becoming even more non-interventionalist as you're experimenting with different things. You're going down the deep end of non-interventionalist.
I was pouring these wines in here and thinking about, why do these wines exist? And that Signé Rosé, it existed because I wanted it to.
Hell yeah.
And the barrel-aged rosé, hell, you could say the same thing too. If you're growing red wine grapes, should you be making rosé? I absolutely believe you should. That is a pretty aggressive form of winemaking to take away that skin contact. But it creates this cool scenario. When I make our white wine Malvasia Bianca is also direct pressed.
Love that.
But I collect all of those skins and I use them with our other wines. This is a form of sacrificial tannin. So those grape skins, those Malvasia Bianca skins, they still have the tannic structure you would find inside of a wine grape skin. And then you can take those skins, add those skins to another wine. What you've just done is increase the skin contact with that white grape juice. You've provided additional tannin, which allows color to bind. You're able to build bigger red wines by adding the skins from processes like this, which is really interesting as well. Again, another form of intervention, but if you're willing to talk about that, I don't think it's a problem. 2019, we'll see. We'll really, I was, talking with lots of winemaker buddies about this. And actually, a random guest one time, he straight up told me to my face, he goes, "Why are you thinking about it so much?" And there's something to be said for that too. Maybe you just need to calm down and relax, drop your shoulders a little bit.
Sure.
It matters.
Yeah.
To me.
Well, before we go into the cellar, you've talked about it for sure. We've kind of touched on it, but I haven't kind of directly asked. When it comes to, it sounds to me like your kind of vineyard philosophy versus in addition to your cellar philosophy is, let's not do too much to impart our hand in what this grape that was grown in this terroir is going to do in a finished bottle. But so like talk about like what did you do to this beyond that Saignée method that we've already talked about with this rosé and this red wine of the same Sangiovese? What's your kind of mentality in the cellar? Are you using new oak? Are you using, and I'm having a hard time not smiling because we just talked about this via text message the other day, but tell the folks out there what your thoughts are when it comes to your philosophy in the cellar. Oak versus, non-oak versus what you're doing with your ambient yeast and all that kind of stuff. Talk a little bit about that.
All of our fermentations are very individual, which is something I really want to point out. When you're making wine like this, it is risky. You run a chance of bad things happening. When I say bad things happening, there are ambient yeast and ambient bacteria that are in a position to get involved in your fermentation that can quite possibly damage your wine. And then the idea of bad bacteria can scare a person. In wine, don't let it scare you. There are no diseases that can grow in wine that can negatively impact the human body. The reason wine was consumed so aggressively thousands of years ago is because the wine could not have been contaminated chemically, whereas the water could have been contaminated. So bad bacteria, ambient yeast, those things are simply things that make wine smell or taste bad.
So you're kind of hearkening back into the day when fermentation was more of a necessity than a let's get fucked up. It was
you had to do it.
Let's kill all the bacteria in this water by turning this water into beer or wine.
Beer's the best example. I think I've not verified this, but I've talked with friends. I think the hydration threshold for beer is like 2.7% alcohol. If you're drinking beer that's less than 2.7% alcohol, it's hydrating. The water level is greater than the alcohol level, and that's just you could drink it all day. I'm not embarrassed. I'm proud of this. This past summer, Lone Star released the National Beer of Texas.
Yes.
They released Lone Star 24/7. This beer, I believe,
remember the commercials.
2.5% alcohol, a beer specifically designed for you to be able to drink it 24/7. And when you are working in a winery or in a vineyard,
very thirsty.
15, 18 hours a day, damn it, that's a really nice beer.
Yeah.
And then it was come to find later that is, I think, a rate of hydration. Like you can really drink it 24/7. So that was a beautiful thing. That beer, but going back to what we were discussing, alcohol, wine, beer, it was a necessity back in the day, something that you could drink. Kind of coming full circle to my practices in the cellar. We ferment spontaneously. I know that there is yeast out there, Brettanomyces, that can make your wine smell like a Band-Aid or a barn. You hear, what do they call it?
There's
so many factors
the smelly
involved.
Onion, all those kind
books lost in an old government building.
Mouse, all that kind of good stuff.
So that's Brett. You've got Lactobacillus. You've got Pediococcus. You've got Acetobacter, which is the road that leads to vinegar. So Acetobacter is basically the devil. But all these things can get involved in your wine during fermentation. I'm aware of that. I keep our fermentations pretty separate. When we made this red wine, this wine fermented in this is about 125 cases of wine. I think there's about 3 separate fermentation bins, and these fermentation bins are 4 feet by 4 feet by about 3 feet tall. They hold about 1,200 pounds of grapes if you machine harvest them, and each bin has its own fermentation. There's a chance one of those bins can get infected. If I ever smell or taste that in a bin, I will remove that bin from the others and keep the others going healthy and strong. Fortunately, we haven't had that issue.
Sure.
Whenever I do smell things that bother me in my wine, first thing I do is call some other winemaker friends and say, "Hey, come smell this and tell me."
I need your nose on this one.
I'm paranoid right now. What do you think? From there, a lot of times you can correct issues by adding a little more oxygen to the wine. Call this a punch down, physically sticking your hands in, splashing that wine. But we keep our fermentation separate. That's a form of risk management. But even further back than that, we make very small lots.
Right.
So instead of making 1,000 cases of any one wine, I'll make 200 cases of 5 wines.
Yeah.
Spread my risk out. God forbid something happened to barrel-aged rosé, we'd have Saignée rosé. God forbid something happened to Saignée rosé, we'd have Sangiovese. We did 100 cases, 100 cases, 125 cases. Had I not made the 2 rosés and had just made red wine, we would have been looking at about 325 cases of red wine. What if something bad happened?
Right.
And I just lost 325 cases of product, and I don't think my children would starve, but...
Well, hey, man, that's
as a business owner, you gotta kind of...
You gotta think about, and that's what's so great, being that you are the winemaker and business owner, is you have to balance those things. You have to think about what's good for the wine, but also what's good for the business, what's good for your family, and that's that's an important aspect of it as well.
There was I talked with a fellow named Mark Rayshap. We had just opened our winery. Mark, he runs the Illuminated Bottle podcast in Austin.
Okay.
And we got to talking about something called élevage. Élevage is essentially the adolescent stage of wine. This is when the wine's in barrel. You'll hear Psalms sometimes say things like, so what was the élevage on this? Well, what they're asking you is new oak versus neutral oak. How long did you use bâtonnage? Did you stir that wine? So they're asking you for the details on how that wine aged. Well, élevage is the same word that the French use when they talk about to rear a child. And I always think about these wines too, going back to this concept of non-interventionist. What if I smelled something happening in my wine? Do I intervene? And sometimes I think maybe I do, just like my child. Like my little girl, my 2.5-year-old, she's starting to develop opinions, which is a real treat. But she's growing up, and I don't want to get too involved. I want her to grow and be the person that she's going to be.
Sure, yeah.
But also, if I see her walking toward the edge of a cliff, I'm going to
probably
fix it.
stop her.
Yeah, that's my job.
Yeah, you're going to intervene.
Yeah, same with wine. If I start to notice something that's going off, I think non-interventionist, low interventionist, however you want to look at it, if I'm in a position to fix something, I probably will, just from a business decision. But that being said, kind of like choosing to Saignée, the way I do my tasting, sitting at this table just like this, I'm in a position to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think if you can be transparent in what you've done and talk about what you choose, what you did and why you did it, I think that's a powerful thing, whether or not you chose to do something or not.
Yeah.
And furthermore, in the cellar, so we make small amounts. We do barrel age everything. All the barrels that we use are neutral oak.
Okay.
I like using oak barrels. We talked about that chemical reaction change. I dig that, but I personally do not dig oak flavor. Like even going back to my whiskey preferences, I drink substantially more Scotch and Irish style whiskeys than I do bourbon or rye. Because bourbon by law has to be aged in new American oak. Yeah. Well, you can taste that, and that's a beautiful thing if that's what you dig. I personally don't lean toward that direction. I prefer something that aged in older oak barrels, neutral oak barrels that no longer provide oak flavor, but they do still act as an aging vessel.
Exactly.
So,
they impart that oxidative maturation, but they don't impart all those real over-the-top kind of butterscotch and vanilla and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And another thing that we take care of in the cellar, making wine like this, you choose to not use a tool like sulfites. Again, sulfur's a powerful thing. My biggest fear is that cats will leave here, go down the highway and be like, man, the guy in Johnson City says you shouldn't filter or add sulfites. No, it's okay to do those things. Man, you got to make your winemaking style match your business model. And, if you want to sell wine at a grocery store, for the love of God, filter it, because there's no way around it. A lot of people don't think that's sexy, and that's okay.
I love it.
I do too, but I'm in a position here. I had another teacher tell me once that winemaking is the art of intelligent compromise. Yeah. You're going to have to compromise. Good. What does it look like for you, and what does it look like for your brand? If you choose not to filter, maybe the compromise is you sit at a table and do all your tastings person to person. That way people can really pick up on why you chose to do what you did, and you can serve a cloudy wine and say, hey, it's cloudy here's why.
Well, there's something very powerful about being able to have a conversation, whether you're the winemaker or someone who just knows about the wine. There is something to be said for being able to sit down and talk to somebody about why this wine looks like it does, tastes like it does, smells like it does. And if people can understand that, wines don't have to taste and smell and look just like that wine that they drink every week, that they go to the grocery store and buy and take home and open up. It doesn't have to be that. It can be something totally different. That doesn't mean that it's good, bad, whatever. It's just that's why that wine was made that way, and this is why it looks and smells and tastes like that. And if you can understand that, you can make a more educated decision as to whether or not you like it. And if you still don't like it at that point, then that's fine. That's your palate. But as long as you have an educated reason as to why you made that decision, then I think that's paramount to helping people broaden their minds about wine, and not only Texas wine, but wine worldwide.
That sulfite discussion,
it's a big one, dude.
It is. It'd be fun to be in a position to advertise, Crowson Wines are healthy because we don't add sulfite.
They're not going to give you a headache if you drink 3 bottles in one night.
That's the thing. I don't necessarily believe that. I choose to do this because I think it tastes better. 2016, when I made my first vintage, I did a bunch of trials. First trial I did was a filtration trial. I took my first rosé, filtered some of it, tasted the filtered wine adjacent to the unfiltered expression of that wine, and in my opinion, the unfiltered expression was fundamentally better. It had a greater depth of character. Going forward, I said, man, I never want to filter my wines because I want to taste this.
Yes.
Next trial I did, the next really aggressive trial I did was a sulfur trial. When it came time to bottle my first rosé, I had never packaged a wine before without sulfites. And I knew that it was such a powerful tool that can do amazing things as far as
shelf
stabilizing your wine. And I was scared. I bottled one case, just 12 bottles of our first rosé without sulfites. Then I added sulfur to the rest of the wine, and we packaged 47 cases of my very first rosé with just a little bit of sulfur to keep it from turning into vinegar, basically.
Sure.
And once a month for a year, I'd pop open 2 bottles. I'd pop open a bottle of rosé with sulfites, and I would taste that wine adjacent to a bottle of sulfite-free rosé. And every single time I compared the two, I preferred the wine that had not received sulfites. To me, it did seem more alive. It did seem like it had a better story to tell. That excited me.
Was there a huge difference in bottle 1 of sulfite, non-sulfite versus bottle 12 of sulfite, non-sulfite?
Huge. I actually revisited that trial. My daughter turned 2 April 4th, 2019. And I popped open another bottle of sulfite-free rosé, tasted it adjacent to the same wine with sulfites, and this was a really, really aggressive change. The wine that had not received sulfites was significantly better than the wine that did. And I felt like that was really, really, really interesting. It seemed like it handled the oxygen exposure better.
Did you feel that the non-sulfite bottle had not varied much from that first non-sulfite bottle, whereas the 12th or whichever that was of the one that had not received the sulfites, do you think that it was dramatically different?
They both changed substantially.
Yeah,
they both changed substantially,
Okay.
But the side-by-side comparison
was sulfites was better.
Correct.
Okay.
Much clearer than it was in the beginning.
Right.
You taste them 2 months after packaging, there's not a huge difference. They're both just young rosé wines. When you're talking about 2 years later, that's a huge difference. And the reason my daughter's birthday is notable is because that rosé was released 2 days before she was born. So we released that wine April 2nd, 2017, and the last time I tasted it was April 4th, 2019, this past year. And I did keep a couple that were able to survive the first year of trials. We'll do it again, and we'll taste it next to the 2017 and 2018 and what will be the 2019. That'll be super exciting. All that being said, the sulfur discussion, it can be done. You can make wine without the use of sulfites in your cellar. One thing that we do to make sure that that happens successfully is we don't use pumps in our wine. There's a chance that pumps can add oxygen to a wine. We use gravity flow or nitrogen displacement. When I move wines from barrel into tank, I'll inject that barrel with nitrogen gas. That gas displaces the wine moves down a hose into a tank. That tank has already been filled with gas to get rid of all the oxygen. So you're moving wine with nitrogen into a tank that's full of nitrogen or argon. That wine goes into that tank, it's completely protected, and then when we bottle, we take a forklift, lift up that tank, and bottle using gravity. So at no point does it really come into contact with oxygen. And whether or not that is one of the reasons why this works, I don't know. But that's what I've been doing for the past several years. And that's something we're definitely not going to change.
Well, and a lot of people would posit that, using pumps will agitate wine and mess with the, chemical composition of tannin and acid and body and change the wine completely from, you talk about intervention versus non-intervention. And on all these trials of side by side, you very well could have a wine that you've made everything being constant. We're talking about a lot of scientific stuff here. There's constants and variables. If the only variable in your equation is pump versus non-pump, I guarantee you're going to have two different bottles of wine.
It's a good possibility. And the cleanliness factor.
Yeah.
If you're making wine in a non-interventionist method, for the love of God, stay really, really clean.
Gotta be.
Because you got to get rid of all those ambient bacteria before they're in a position to invade your wine. And the pump is just a great candidate to harbor bacteria.
Sure.
So many
pumps, small parts in there.
The pumps that we use touch wine when they are at the juice stage, right after being pressed out of grapes. Touch wine at the finished wine stage. Touch byproduct, like sometimes you can use a pump to just clean a tank out.
Sure.
I don't know. Let's go to the cellar.
Let's do that.
Yep.
Woo!
That's a positive sign.
Yeah.
So there's activity taking place for sure. Now we're going to be packaging this rosé soon. I need to run some numbers on it and make sure it's done with that malolactic fermentation process. Make sure that basically what I'm trying to create is a desert wasteland of nutrients. I want to create an environment where there is nothing consumable, so that when I move the wine from barrel into bottle, I know that it's not going to do anything weird. I need to create an environment in here where anything that can happen will happen in barrel. So that when it goes into bottle, the chances of anything happening are not there. And what I've sprayed on this thief, by the way, is alcohol. Still the greatest cleaning product we have. So this is Sangiovese Rosé, direct press method. This was farmed at Nara Vineyards in Brownfield, Texas in 2019. What you got?
Very bright, very fresh. Definitely has a very youthful component to it, and I don't think that it has as much of that kind of characteristic like Italianness to it. I think that it's a little bit more in that bright, youthful rosé.
Very much so. The acid is doing the talking here.
Oh yeah.
Which I dig. We release this when it's hot outside.
Damn it! And and I'm sure this is because it's kind of still working around in the barrel, but it has a little bit of effervescence to
Trap
it, which
CO2.
is really cool.
Yeah, there's some. You could hear it escaping.
Damn, dude, are you gonna maybe carbonate this guy? Because that would be killer.
I'd like to. I've thought about it, man. If we could carb part of it, package it as a sparkling. That does kind of go back to that intervention discussion. If you add CO2 to something. That being said, it is delicious, so
dude,
it's really hard to.
Big time delicious. Wow. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
the Naras do a great job with their fruit for sure. And
they're awesome. They're one of the first vineyard operations I contracted with when I started buying fruit for the Crowson brand. I'd gotten to know Nikila pretty well. And when it came time to really start getting serious about making my own wine, she was my first phone call.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, very lively, very bright.
Yeah. All right, let's see how we do this here. Back into the bowels.
The depths of the cellar.
Wow. There are facilities about 1,000 square feet, but we do have about 84 barrels in here right now. 10 different grape varieties, about 12 different wines. $13 different wines. But we do all the production here on site too. We're basically in our own way. Just fine.
Literally.
You do what you gotta do. All right, remember the color of that Sangiovese.
The Sangio,
that experienced the Saignée process. This is the same Sangio. Hold on, I
gotta finish it off.
It's R&D.
Product control.
So same Sangio. You can already see the difference in color.
Oh yeah, big time.
This did not experience the Saignée process. This is just what it is.
Well, see, it's funny. This one has a more similar nose to the Sangio. I mean, definitely different color.
That is terroir.
Terroir.
Yeah.
Is this also Nicky Nara fruit?
This is Hosfly.
This is back to
This is the same
There
fruit.
you go. There you
This is
go.
what we had in there. I agree. So this is it's a cool vintage side by side. It did not do the Saignée method, so it does have a lighter body, but
Lighter body, but like we were going back to what we were talking about, that same kind of DNA running through the wine, similar kind of flavor profile, definitely a lighter structure.
Lighter structure and lighter alcohol too. Those rosés are just shy of 14% alcohol, which the red wine is also just shy of 14%. I don't quite know where this is sitting. I need to look at my notes. But if I was a betting man, I'd say we're looking somewhere between 12 and 13.
I was gonna say probably closer to 12 to me.
Yeah, I don't think it's not north of 13.
It's light. It's definitely chuggable, man. I mean,
Well, you get this on a hot day.
I think what do you keep is it like 50, 60, 65 in
I
here?
created an environment where it doesn't get above 65.
Yeah.
Right now I think it's 58.
Okay.
So it doesn't heat, it just cools in here.
Right.
The recommended temperature for barrel storage is 59 degrees. That is said to be the ideal temperature for microoxygenation. I do keep our cellar a touch warmer, kind of going back to that idea of creating a wasteland of nutrients. Keep it a touch warmer. Bacterial activity takes place better at warmer temperatures. So a little bit warmer, maybe a little more bacterial activity takes place. And also I'm not in a position where I'm damaging the wine at that temperature. So I feel really comfortable with the 65 degree mark.
Well, and it's the reason I ask is that it's really drinking at like a perfect. I think that this is like the service temperature for sure. I mean, this is
It's 60 degrees.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's kind of what we're thinking.
All right, well, we're back from the cellar here, and we've got, Henry, you tell us what we've got, man.
Yep, just pulled this. We're about to bottle this. This is our 2018 Zinfandel. And this was farmed at Nara Vineyards, and Zinfandel, it got a bad name in the 90s because of white Zinfandel. That is not the case. Zinfandel's got a really cool history in America. It's one of the grapes that the Italians brought over to Northern California. You can go to California right now and see Zinfandel vineyards that were planted in the 1880s. Zinfandel has always been special to me because, again, the first wine I'd ever had that was made in this non-interventionist, this 0-0 method, was a Zinfandel. Well, 2018 was our first year to make Zinfandel. This was 18 months in neutral oak, and it's 15% alcohol, so it'll take you places you didn't know you wanted to go. Wine.
Immediate thing when you mention that alcohol content, as I've taken a sip of it, I'm thinking to myself, Jesus, that's gonna be bad because
it's dangerous. It wears it really well.
It does not show high alcohol. It does not show big, brawny, I can only have a glass of this Zinfandel. As soon as I take a swallow of this wine, it immediately fills my mouth with saliva because the acidity is so juicy. It's so chewy that you can just my mouth's still watering, dude.
This is a big wine.
And it's not not volatile acidity. It's not sharp acidity. It's not acidity that makes your face pucker like a Jester King beer. It's just
balance. What's unique about this is it's 15% alcohol. I harvested these grapes the same day that we harvested our white wine grapes for our Malvasia Bianca.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Californians.
I know, man.
Saying what?
Yeah, this was harvested in August 2018, and it's 15%. It's a monster.
But it's well integrated.
It is. It's I was talking with a buddy the other day. Our menu this summer is going to be rosé, which we just tasted, be between 11 and 12% alcohol, maybe just north of 12% alcohol. Our Malvasia Bianca white wine will be north of 12% alcohol. Then we're going to hit a Malbec that's 13% alcohol. We'll have a Syrah that's around 13% alcohol.
Oh, you're throwing Syrah out?
Yeah, this March. And then the Zinfandel is going to be out this summer. And I'm like, yeah, and that's about 15% alcohol. And that friend immediately was like, oh, thank God you're going to have something boozy,
What?
But so you like that, I think one of the first things that human body experiences when alcohol hits your tongue is sweetness. You create an environment where it immediately follows with this awful burn if you're drinking something like Everclear, shitty vodka. But if you're drinking something that's proper alcohol, properly balanced, it just feels right. And this has that.
Absolutely. So I've got 3 questions for you to end the broadcast day.
All right.
First question. We've talked about sulfites. We've talked about intervention, ambient yeast. A lot of these things are buzzwords for the natural wine industry. Do you consider yourself a natural winemaker?
The natural winemaker movement. Yeah. No. But yes. So we do fall under that umbrella. It's unfair for me to say no because we get called that a lot. The problem with natural wine is it doesn't have a definition.
Sure.
Right now there are natural winemakers that choose to add sulfites. There are natural winemakers that don't filter some of their wines, but they do filter other wines. There are natural winemakers that might add a little bit of sugar if they're making a sparkling wine. The idea of additives, where do you draw the line? I think one of the events, actually it's coming up in May, Wild World.
Love Wild
It's coming
World.
back to Austin. And they did a really good job of just kind of, boom, line in the sand. It's either spontaneously fermented or it's not. And they called this event Wild World, and it was a celebration of spontaneously fermented products. They didn't use the word natural wine in their marketing. It was wild. And I thought that was
at Jester King, by the way.
Does.
Such a fun event.
It's super slick. It's a lot of fun.
Continue.
But a beautiful thing for them to be in a position to draw that line in the sand, because it does create an incredible environment for confusion. You don't really know. Here's my story. When I first opened our doors, I had a buddy of mine named Jim Johnson come and do a tasting with me. Jim was the first winemaker in Texas to have a degree in enology, the study of winemaking, enology and viticulture, study of grape growing, from UC Davis.
Okay.
Well, he comes out of California with this beautiful degree, comes to Texas in the 90s, and in the late 90s, he was one of the first people to plant Tempranillo and Tannat in Texas. Pretty stinking cool. Those are grapes that we still work with aggressively in Texas to this day. He came and did a tasting with me, tasted through all of our wines. We had a beautiful time. We got to talk about these wines. At the end of the tasting, he drops his shoulders and he goes, "Man, Henry, I'm so glad these wines are good." They like in the 90s, natural wine was just another word for flawed wine.
Sure.
And very much so, he was correct. There are a lot of natural winemakers that are willing to peddle less than ideal product just because this is the way it is. I read about this a lot, but I read something someone wrote one time, and they made the comment that if you smell a wine and all you smell is VA, which is volatile acidity, it's like it can manifest itself like nail polish remover, or it's vinegar, basically. If you smell vinegar, or if you smell Brettanomyces, that barnyard sensation, if those are the compounds that you're smelling when you smell a wine, is that an appropriate representation of terroir, or is that a representation of Brett or VA? I always thought that was really interesting. There are a lot of natural winemakers that are willing to serve stuff that has those compounds that, yes, are naturally occurring, but in wine are generally agreed upon to be flaws. You mask a lot of the fruit if those are the compounds that you smell.
Sure.
But maybe that is not an appropriate representation. That's something that's always been on my mind. We will not release a bad wine here. We've made one wine thus far that I felt like was not up to snuff, and I'm still working on a plan B for that product. Yeah, it happens.
Brandy.
Yes, yeah, our license does allow that. You can find a way to fold it into a dessert wine program.
Yep.
But that has happened before, and that was one thing. I could release it and say this is what this wine is. But I do feel like it is inappropriate from a wine enjoying perspective.
Sure.
So I think we do fall under the natural wine umbrella. I do choose to use the phrase non-interventionist because I do think it's unique to note that we aren't using anything. We are one of the only wineries in Texas where if we had an ingredients list, the ingredients is grapes.
Sure.
All the time, across the board. And I think that's really, really exciting. So non-interventionist is the umbrella I choose to walk under as opposed to the natural wine umbrella.
And I think that's a better one, because you're not pigeonholed to one thing or another. You can say our philosophy is we want to let the grapes express their terroir as best as possible, and whatever we have to do or not do to do that, then that's what we're going to do.
It's very clearly defined.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I dig that. What else you got? I'm on fire.
We'll take it from a broader spectrum, and we'll hone it down a little bit. Feelings on Texas wine industry, where it is right now from a national perspective, and what do we need to do? God, I feel like I'm like interviewing you right now. What do we need to do to get a better, I guess maybe a broader reach and to get people interested in Texas wine?
I think that if we were willing to push Texas wine to other states would be excited about it. I've had people come in here from Maine, from Colorado, from Oregon and Washington. They're like, man, we know a restaurant where your wines would fit in really beautifully. Well, from my perspective, that's wholesale and there's licensing stuff going on. There are factors that get involved that make that tough, and I choose not to endeavor into that field. Whereas I think that we could, and I think a lot of Texas wineries could, we could become more known nationally. But we're fortunate in Texas that right now Texans are drinking Texas wines, which is really cool. It has its own little localization. Yeah. You go wine tasting down the highway here, the person tasting wine next to you is from Houston, person tasting wine next to them is from Dallas, person tasting wine next to them is from Austin, next to them is San Antonio, El Paso. Every once in a while you get to hang out with an East Texan.
Oh yeah,
which is really, really cool.
Old Tyler Texans.
Yeah, I'm from Longview.
There you go.
Getting to spend time with folks like that is a real treat. You go wine tasting in Napa Valley, person next to you might be from Missouri. Person next to them might be from New York. Person next to them is from Spain. It's more of an international wine destination, which is also a beautiful thing. But I do think it's much cooler right now that Texans are choosing to drink Texas wine. We could be recognized nationally, but I don't know that it's worth forcing it from my perspective. Right now, I'm sitting on 2,500 cases of wine, which in the grand scheme of things is not a lot. We are in a position to ship nationally, and we will joyfully do so. Last week, we sent a bottle to Iowa.
Okay.
I think there are people that are interested in that, but I don't think there is a need to truly deliberately expand.
Sure. Okay. So kind of non-interventionist style of spreading the Texas wine.
Word of mouth. Our marketing budget is a grand total of $0.
Yes, sir.
So it is all word of mouth. You know, if you want to drink our wine, I think that's a really beautiful thing. We will continue to joyfully share it. Well, I don't ever want to come across as like the watch salesman who opens his jack and is like, man, I've got 3 different Sangioveses and a Zinfandel.
They're going to blow you away.
I know. I don't want to be that. That's not the dream scenario. I think keep making really cool product, and people might really dig it. And if they dig it, maybe they'll get behind your brand, and things will develop from there. I think that's a really beautiful way to look at it. It is like a family. I think most our regulars, the people that come in here, they all pretty much have my cell phone number. I'll just get a text message. They'll be like, "Hey man, can we cruise in?" It's like, "Yeah, we're here. Yeah. You mind hanging out with my daughter because she's here too, tearing things up." I think that's been a really cool. The localization of Texas wine like that has been beautiful. You know, I don't get a lot of text message from Californians who are just generally cruising through.
Sure.
Which, yeah.
Well, where can people find your wine if they're watching this and they're saying, definitely going to make a trip down to Fredericksburg. I'll pop into Johnson City on my way in or out of there. But apart from that, apart from coming in here and seeing you guys, is there some other places where they can find your wine?
Couple of breweries. I think they might have some of our wine still at Jester King. We've done a handful of events with Jester King. Stylistically, we're very simpatico.
Sure.
With what the beer styles they make and the wine style we make. We get along swimmingly, which is a real treat. But Jester King has historically had some of our wine. There's a chance they still might. I don't know. In San Marcos, Texas, is Rough House Brewery.
Yes.
And they do have our Sangiovese right now. I'm not sure how much they have left. We don't aggressively distribute. The only bar we've ever been in Austin is Better Half, and they will have some of our wine in March, if not sooner. But I'm looking at March, expanding our horizons. There are certain wines, Rosé, Malvasia Bianca, our white wine. I think we do those wines in such a beautiful and unique fashion. That's what I'd like to be known for.
Yeah.
And those wines will be available in distribution starting in late March, April, primarily focused on restaurants, because these wines tango with a good meal.
Sure.
I
mean, these are food.
They drink well on their own, but when it comes to a good meal, they take on a whole new personality, and that's a personality that I really dig.
Absolutely.
So restaurant focused when it comes to the distribution model. We'll never stop working with breweries. I mean, there's no way around it. This is a beer drinker's body. I make wine. I prefer wine, but we will always have a bunch of wine at breweries.
For the beer.
Yeah, exactly. They're our teammates, our brothers in arms.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, last question. What right now, other than the incredible wines that you can find down here in Texas, what are you drinking?
Absolute vodka.
Yes.
Yeah, primarily. I will say this:
in martini form and just pouring it in a glass with some
martini.
ice.
I do kiss it with a little bit of vermouth.
Gotta kiss it.
You've got you got the vermouth purists out there, or the martini purists rather, who don't want to use vermouth. If I'm drinking I don't like it dirty.
Okay.
If I'm drinking a vodka martini, a little bit of vermouth, I freeze cocktail onions and drop frozen cocktail onions into the martini, which makes it just a little bit colder, which I really dig. But that's if I'm doing vodka. If I do a gin martini, I do it the Winston Churchill style. Churchill used to pour and shake his gin, strain it into his glass, and then he would just toast Italy where vermouth is being made.
Right.
And that was it.
That's the only bit of
sufficiency of vermouth. You just toast Italy. So if I drink
gin, ice, toast Italy.
That's it. Vodka, kiss it with a little vermouth.
Sure.
Vodka, by its nature, just doesn't have a whole lot of flavor going on.
Yeah.
And vermouth is a beautiful thing. It's a wine-based product.
Awesome, man.
But a lot of Italian Sangiovese, because I've been really excited about our Sangiovese program right now. I drink a whole lot of Grenache. I fail safe. If I go to a restaurant and I see a Spanish Garnacha or a Côte de Rhone, something Grenache heavy, that's typically the direction I lean.
Okay.
And ironically, I don't make Grenache. I'd like to.
Yeah.
It's on the to-do list.
Talk about a boozy one, too.
No, man, I gotta find Paso Robles Grenache is one of my favorites. But yeah, that's the direction I typically go. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks a lot for doing this with me, man. Really appreciate it. Always love hanging out with you, drinking wine together.
I agree, man.
Henry Crowson, I'm Mitchell Sherrock. Thanks for being here, guys. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.